today it's Olga Kalino, who's a PhD student in history also in the Nanyang Technological University. So today we're very happy to have with us four speakers from various disciplines, but they are all focusing on this particular subject on shipworms. And let me first try to introduce our speakers, yeah, before we move on to. So I guess you all see the slide and the title of our talk, right? From Pests to Promise: Shipworms in Climate, Culture, and Health. And our four speakers of today comes up from different disciplines and also from different countries as well. So they're joining us from Hong Kong and the Philippines as well. So and we have two biologists, one journalist, and also one anthropologist in among our speakers. So to introduce each of them, yeah, are we all here? At the moment? All right. So first of all, we have Michelle Malay with us, who is biologist at the Marine Science Institute, University of the Philippines, Diliman. And she currently focuses on documenting marine invertebrate biodiversity from understudied habitats and also on establishing the research museum of the university for species discovery, collaborative knowledge building, and the promotion of bioliteracy. And then we also have Giselle, another biologist, Giselle Batamalake, who is a researcher also at the Marine Science Institute, University of Philippines, Diliman. And her research revolves around Philippines mollusks like snails and clams, wherein she has also published both scientific articles as well as a children's book on the subject. So I guess during the conversation, we'll also talk about this. And then we have with us also Maria Mangajas, who is professor at the Department of Anthropology, also at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. And she has investigated life and livelihood in small coastal communities, including a traditional fishery for dorado and also flying fish in Batanes, Philippines. She has also made an acquaintance with shipworms this year, which will also be what we are focusing on in today's conversation. Last but not least, we have Crystal Chow with us. Crystal, are you? Crystal, yeah.
Yes,
She,
I'm here.
all right. So yeah, she's an award-winning bilingual freelance journalist and feature writer from Hong Kong who writes about climate change, global health, and culture across and beyond Asia. And she's also a science communicator and journalism educator who holds an MSc in global energy and climate policy from SOAS, University of London. And currently, I think, yeah, she's also teaching at the University of Hong Kong. So without further ado, I guess we will. So we've introduced all our speakers and ourselves as well. And then I guess next, what we wish to do is perhaps also to introduce a bit about our subject of today, which is the shipworms. And I'm sure that it is something that we know briefly about, but then definitely from the team, definitely we can learn more about what exactly are shipworms. So may I pass the time to the team and feel free to also switch to your PowerPoint slides. Yeah, if you can. Let me try to.
So while the team is preparing the slides, just to add something on this. So today we are going to really discuss about the fieldwork that the team has conducted in the Philippines and their interdisciplinary approach to the world of shipworms. Shipworms have long been dismissed as a pest, and now we are going to discover how they sit in between ecology, science, and culture, and why is it so important to preserve the habitats of shipworm for like a future research. So thank you so much for being with us today, and we're ready to listen about shipworms.
The slides now.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us in today's conversation. I guess I'll start off. So, as QI mentioned, I'm Michelle Malay. I'm a professor of biology at the Marine Science Institute in the University of the Philippines, Diliman. And I'm part of a team that's just started studying shipworms as a project last year. And it's such an honor to be able to talk about our work in such a diverse and international audience, really. It's great and a bit nerve-wracking, but that's okay. So I was asked to start off by talking a bit about the shipworms themselves from the biological perspective, and then we can look at other angles later on. So I think the title of the webinar was From Pest to Promise, right? And shipworms have been considered pests for a long time. Look at this piece of wood that's filled with these little white chalky tubes, and those are boreholes made by shipworms. So one of their common names, the way they're called, is the termites of the sea, because they act exactly like termites, boring through wood and causing a lot of damage, especially during the time when essentially everything was constructed out of wood, whether you have piers, ports, pilings, and ships. So wooden ships would rapidly get bored into, and you wouldn't be able to tell from the outside that the damage is so bad, because actually the holes from the outside are really small, but the inside can rapidly get digested by shipworm infestations. So it's been a recognized problem for mariners for many centuries. And so this is what they look like a bit more when looked at a bit more closely. So the best known species is called Teredo navalis, navalis referring to its role in destroying entire fleets of wooden ships. And like I said, they create these boreholes. In this illustration from 1863 on the left, it's very straight, but they can be highly convoluted, and they can be large or small, as you can see in the photo on the right. There's a hand extracting a very small shipworm out, but when they grow up, they can make these very, very large boreholes. And they do so by using their modified shells. So, they are bivalves actually. They have shells just like a clam or a cockle, two shells, but they use it to rasp into the wood. So what you see, for example, I don't know if you see my cursor actually. Do people see my cursor? I move around. You see this borehole over here? And
Yes.
then at the top it's round. That's from the rounded anterior front end just rasping into the wood deeper and deeper and kind of like connecting with the other borehole. So quick growing, voracious eating wood borers of the sea. But like I said, even though they look like worms, they're actually clams. So they're mollusks, and they have these tiny shells on their front ends. And at the middle of the shell emerges a small foot that also helps it hold on to the wood and rasp. And then the shell has little ridges to help with the burrowing. And then their extremely long body, of course, completely outgrows their shell. Unlike other clams that just live inside the shell, they're out of the shell because they're protected by the wood that they live in. And so they have this long body with a long digestive system and gut and gills for respiration and other functions. And at the front end, they have these siphons for drawing water in and out of their body, because clams need water constantly for filter feeding. And then at the very tip as well, there are these very strange structures called pallets. These pallets serve to plug the tubes of the shipworms whenever they retract, for example, if they're exposed to air or if they're threatened by a predator. So extremely different looking from any other mollusk known and from any other clam known. So aside from there, here's a couple more views, right? This is another species called Tamilocus mabinia, which was discovered from the Philippines, and so far it's only known from the Philippines. And you can see here one of the two shells looking very different from typical bivalve shells. And the pallets, the ones that plug the holes on the anterior end, the ones over here. And it's usually those structures that biologists like me look at in trying to identify which species we're looking at. The pallets are over here in this figure in letter F over here. And their ornamentation and shape can vary a lot. And if you look at the young shipworm, the one that just settled in this drawing here by Giselle, I think, they look like a typical clam. And then as they grow, they get deeper and deeper into the wood and bigger. And sometimes in the sunken pieces of wood, you'll see their little siphons sticking out for drawing water in and out. And it's also through those siphons that they would release sperm or egg that would then be fertilized, usually in the water column, and have some time as planktonic larvae before settling down when they find a suitable piece of wood. So, yeah, that's essentially the life cycle of a shipworm. And I think I'll hand over to the next when we talk about the importance of shipworms in other aspects.
So a quick additional, I see two questions from the audience asking about, they basically a general question on whether all these shipworms are called tamilok, or is it actually a specific species of shipworm?
Oh yeah, very cool question. So in the Philippines, in many places they call it tamilok. And tamilok, in some places it's called tambilok. And I know in parts of Indonesia it's called tambelo. So you can see, first of all, that throughout the insular Southeast Asia, it's known and the names have a common root. But that term is usually, I hear it in the context of mangrove-associated shipworms, because there are a few that aren't in mangroves, but rather in sunken wood, like these ones that I showed, in sunken wood. And they're for the ones that are bigger and eaten. Some species of shipworms never get very large, and they don't really have a common name. But within the term tamilok, there can be multiple species. As long as they're large and edible, they're called tamilok and mangrove associated.
And there's also a question on whether there's any difference between these worms and termites in terms of their effects on the wood.
Well, termites, well, first of all, of course, they're in very different habitats. Shipworms have to be in water. And then after they eat the wood, it's turned into something like sawdust that they keep in their gut for a while before being expelled. But it's essentially like termites. It's making a lot of holes. And those holes become habitat actually for other organisms as well. And they recycle the wood and unlock the carbon and make it available for other organisms as well. So in that sense, I guess what they do to the wood is very similar as what termites do.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess we'll move on to other questions later on, but then for now, I guess we are also interested to hear more about shipworms from the others, particularly from the perspectives of like journalism. We have journalist Crystal here, and we also have an anthropologist, Maria, with us. So for you, would it actually be a very different way in entering the conversation or trying to understand shipworms, and what actually makes you interested in starting your research on shipworm as well? I guess I would just pass this to the two of you, maybe.
So maybe I can go first. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning. So I'm really glad to be here. So like QY has said, I'm a journalist. I joined Michelle's teams expedition back in June last year to basically profile their work and their field research, looking for shipworms in the field. So my own journey with shipworms started actually pretty recently. I was it was 2024, early 2024. I was about to head to America for a science journalism fellowship at MBL, a marine biological laboratory. So right before I left, I decided to get on really a casual call with my friend Michelle here, just to catch up because, like, she's an actual marine biologist that I know. So during our video call, she started telling me about her research and showed me a children's book that Giselle had created, which she will show all of you later. So as she was flipping through those illustrated pages, I was like really fascinated right away because I've always liked learning about weird, overlooked creatures, I would say. And prior to our call, I have known nothing about shipworms. I've never heard of the name before our call. So a few months later, I visited Michelle at her university and finally met Giselle in person. So she gave me her books, and the three of us just started talking. So at that point, there wasn't a solid plan or a big project. We were just like bouncing off ideas and, wondering if we could team up to tell a story that could bring our different backgrounds together. So it was a very natural start to group you see here today.
Okay.
And
Can we have a look at the picture books on the slides as well? I guess for the next slide, it
yes.
will be Michelle, are you? Oh,
Michelle, maybe slide 20.
I'm sorry, I don't know which one's slide 20 from my end. Just keep going
Okay,
forward?
just keep going
going.
until
Okay,
we
tell me when to stop. Sorry.
just keep
Here we
going.
go.
No, just
Oh,
keep
no.
going.
Sorry.
Just keep going.
We do a
Here?
little bit of spoiler.
Yeah, I think it was towards the end.
Towards the end.
No,
Okay,
towards the end. Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think what's interests me the most is that I know that for the past few decades, that perception around shipworms being pests has really started to change because of what scientists have managed to discover since then, and the work they help us better understand shipworms' unique biology and their potential as medicine and sustainable food. So we are moving away from seeing them as just a problem to fix or control. We are actually moving to a future where they actually show a lot of promise. Um, so yeah, it really is interesting and very fascinating. I will talk a bit about how our project actually came to be later on. But yeah, I think that's basically my entry point to shipworms, and I've been obsessed with them ever since. So I think Maria maybe could add some of her inputs and her observation from the field as well.
Hello. So I was going to share the map. Now Michelle has to go back. I'm Maria Mangahas. I'm a professor of anthropology in UP, Diliman. And I actually have not ever met the Tamilok, but I had read this article by Takashi Tsuji, which was published in the journal Agham Tao. And so I'm sharing this map. It shows you he visited many sites in the Philippines to look into the harvesting and food culture of Tamilok. And so it shows you there are quite a few places where people know a lot about Tamilok. So when Michelle told me they were going to do research on this, and I just shared this article with them. It among other things, he says that people know how to find them and they eat them, especially to go with drinking. like a food to go with a drinking session. But at the same time, it's also recommended for pregnant women and breastfeeding women. So they do appreciate that it's a good food. And he also collected drinking songs that mention Camilo. So this was actually a very interesting article for me, and maybe it also fed quickly into the project of Crystal and Michelle. And so they asked me to join.
Yeah. Can you also, Michelle, can
Yes.
you switch it to next slide about shipworms being food for local communities? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think before shipworms became a viral sensation in travel and food vlogs online, they were and still are, like Maria said, a staple food for coastal and rural communities across the Philippines. So long before these like cameras, smartphones arrived, people have people have been harvesting them from mangroves as a simple source of protein and subsistence food because shipworms can be harvested all year round and it's basically free. So when I was actually researching for my story, I found that this wasn't just a Philippine phenomenon either. So it turns out in Australia, indigenous communities used to have similar traditions of eating shipworms, but they do have a different local names. And it was often looked down on by colonial settlers there in the past because white people dismiss it as something unsavory or even like a barbaric. Um, cultural practice. So it's kind of like a classic example of how local indigenous foodways are often misunderstood by outsiders. So one of the things I really wanted to explore in the story is how these traditions are actually very narratively rich because they carry so much cultural and ecological knowledge about the environment. So like Maria said, Takashi's paper, like it was cited in my story as well, because I was like very interested in the folk songs he documented in the paper. So yeah, there were actually a lot of ecological knowledge about the environment these people live in, and they knew what was the right time and right seasons to catch them. So yeah, there are a lot of things and stories untold. So, but that knowledge is also kind of at risk here because of, rapid urbanization and maybe a lack of cultural preservation, among other things. So these traditions are kind of on the verge of dying out in many local communities. That's something I know Maria will touch on more deeply from an anthropological perspective later, maybe. So there's also a very interesting tension developing around the shipworm's identity today. If you have read the story, so you would know that on one hand, it is the deeply rooted local subsistence food in local communities. But on the other hand, it's also being rebranded in the West by some as something like the next gen sustainable seafood for a lot of health conscious consumers in the West. So it was still like kind of like a startup. It's still a very niche idea, but the plan is to actually massively um, you know, culture them in a contained space so that you can have something like shipworms being served as oysters. So it's targeting health conscious consumers in the West. So at the same time, when I was in the community, tagging along the research team, I've also met all these local vloggers and fishers. So these people are turning these delicacies into an exotic, kind of spectacular online trend. And it's drawing a lot of people, local tourists, international tourists, to these communities specifically to harvest and try them. So, which brings up some ethical questions because, these are ethical questions that I might discuss a little bit deeper later on. But I think, what immediately call up in my mind is that, who really benefits from this hype and what happens to the ecosystem when a local tradition becomes a global commodity. So I'll dive more into those questions when we talk about the role of storytelling later on. But yeah, I'll pass the mic back to Michelle or the others.
Oh, I want to answer the question on
Yeah.
about whether it's edible. Because I think that maybe we can answer it now.
Yeah.
So okay, so what we learned and also Takashi noted is that especially when we went to Oriental Mindoro with the team of Michelle, what we learned from them is that some are not good to eat, and it depends really on the wood, because if it's a poisonous mangrove, then tree that is known to be a poisonous tree, then the tamilok is also bad to eat. I mean, you might get poisoned, and so they need to know distinct species of mangroves in order to know which you can eat and not to eat, or also which is more delicious, because the taste of the wood is an aspect of the taste of the tamilok. So the taste of which is better to eat depends also on the wood. Yeah. Okay. So I think someone else will speak now.
Yeah. I also want to add on to the different ways of preparing shipworms as a source of food, because when we travel more inland into rural communities, we actually met these freshwater shipworms, and because they were caught in fresh water, basically rivers, um, so I kind of understood that they have to be cooked instead of eaten raw, because of like parasites and things like that. But and then local people were actually telling me that they prefer it cooked because they think it just tastes better that way. So maybe there's a health reason, maybe there's also like preferences. So yeah, so there are different ways of preparing them and cooking them in terms of the habitat these shipworms are harvested from. Yeah.
And so some of them are like appreciated more as a snack to go with drink or to go with drink, but like those big ones in the freshwater can be appreciated as a survival food. If there's nothing else to eat, then they know they can harvest the one in the river.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we haven't touched on one very important aspect of shipworms, and that's their symbionts. Do you want to talk about it, Giselle?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So hello, I'm Giselle. So prior to this project with Michelle, Crystal, and Maria, I was also tangentially involved in a project that looked at shipworms and their symbionts. Shipworms all over in select parts of the Philippines. And the reason why, I guess this slide captures it. The reason why shipworms are, well, they're technically not so bizarre because there are other animals that bore into wood, just like termites. But the shipworms, as they grow, they also have bacterial symbionts that allow them to digest the wood. So as they keep growing, they keep feeding into the wood. And what helps them digest the wood is the presence of bacteria. And in earlier literature, they found that the bacteria are found in the gills. And then these bacteria produce compounds that help digest the wood. But in recent literature as well, there were some bacteria that were also found in the cecum, which is sort of like an extra stomach for the, if you can imagine cows having stomachs that allows them to digest all the grass and any cellulosic material. That's the same with shipworms. So recent literature also found some bacteria in the cecum. And this is a particular aspect of interest for a lot of the biotech companies, especially because the compounds that are able to digest cellulose would have a lot of applications. Yeah, that's all for me for this
So
particular
maybe let
slide.
me ask you a little bit about this communication, because on one side we have the indigenous part, then we have like the scientific part. So how this is transformed into storytelling to preserve the environment? Can you tell us a little bit more about this scientific communication for climate resilience?
Okay. Okay, so well, all right, so let's start here. Well, this is I guess this is also going back to how Crystal and I met, and so way before the project, back in 2022, I think some of you might be familiar of Manila Bay, where there are so many reclamation areas. There is also this plan back in 2022. And I believe it's still ongoing. The reclamation projects in the northern side of north of Manila, so here in the Bulacan area, to create another airport. And so next slide, please. All right. So I guess in my as a form of protest, I would say, I created a storybook because I believe that it's to get to have policy makers and decision makers who would consider the environment. You should first have a well-informed public, or a voting population that actually cares about the environment. And of course, it's always good to start early. So hence I created a storybook. And the reason I thought of the shipworms was, well, one, I was, because of my involvement in an earlier project that looked at shipworms. And number two, because we still actually don't know a lot about the shipworms. Even in the Philippines, we don't have an updated list of what species exist in the Philippines. In terms of literature, there's about 23 to 24 species documented, but we're yet to confirm if all these species are still existing in the Philippines. And because of that, we might lose something that hasn't even been studied or maximized in terms of biotech applications. So that's why in the next slide, please. There's a part in the book where I think this is at the end. So I'll just read the English translations. As per me and my king, we found new homes in the sunken debris. Anything made of wood was for ours for free, but I fear the water is not as clean as before. In time, we might not survive anymore. So in here, it's also, I guess, letting the people know that, well, we know that there is no planet B, and the reason humans are panicking right now is because humans are most affected. Nature itself will recover, will heal. We might lose some species, but there are new groups that might arise. But on the human side, we definitely won't survive if we keep on with the trajectory of destroying the environment. So hence that's okay. So going back to that, I think it's storytelling itself is a powerful tool. If you go to the next slide, this book has been distributed in I think well, not so many parts of the Philippines, but even in the National Museum in Iloilo, a friend of mine has done book readings and has taught it to teachers who could also teach about it to their students, and it's something that I think would be valuable in terms of sort of putting people's minds into caring for the environment. Yeah, that's all. I think I talked too much about it.
Yeah, I find the anthropomorphism of the shipworms really, yeah, they're really cute with the eyes and mustache, and I think it's an effective way of telling the stories to a younger audience as well. Maybe you can think about turning it into an animation next year.
Ah,
Yeah, I think
right.
I think there's one attendees already asking how they can actually order the book.
Wow.
Oh, sorry. So the book my official distributor is Birds in Focus. They're an organization in the Philippines that they primarily started with bird conservation, but now they're looking into other Philippine biodiversity. Um, but I think, well, I think they still have stocks, but if not, then we will make more print, more copies
Yes,
soon.
we print.
Yeah. If it is sold out in their website, then just shoot me an email. We will try to get more prints out. Yeah.
And yeah, and thank you. Yeah, and talking about communicating these ideas to the public, so in addition to children book narratives, Crystal, so you two have been trying to construct new narratives in a more journalistic sense. I'm aware that you have also written and published this paper with the Contrapunto, and also congratulations for getting is it called the Bridging Narrative Award for this?
Yeah, it's a story grant.
Right.
Yeah,
So
so
mhm. Can
yeah.
you tell us more
Oh,
about that?
okay.
So sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you, QY. Yeah, so like I said earlier, Giselle's book was a major reason why I went on this expedition with Michelle's crew in the first place. So her work is already driving impact outside of the Philippines. So yeah, so I should maybe very quickly tell you how I became a journalist in the first place, because I think that's kind of important. That's an important context. So I never went to a J school. I didn't have a fancy head start in international journalism. So I graduated from uni more than 15 years ago. And so at that time, I was still figuring my life out, basically, and I ended up in the Philippines for 6 months on an NGO placement program. So it was my first ever job work experience, I would say. So that experience in the Philippines opened my eyes to things we just didn't talk much about in Hong Kong at that time, like climate change. So that experience in the Philippines changed my whole career trajectory. So because like after I got home, I started wondering, what could actually combine my love for reading, writing, storytelling, and traveling with these issues? So yeah, I mean, I guess the rest is history. So yeah, so throughout more than a decade of work experience, I have had other jobs on and off because, staying in journalism can be very hard. But I always come back to what I'm most passionate about, that is seeing the world and telling stories about matters that are closest to my heart. So this shipworm story is actually my first proper venture into long form, or so-called narrative journalism, because I felt this format was the only way to actually capture the complexity here. And I think by now you have heard about all these threats, uh, culturally, scientifically, ecologically, like shipworms are so many things at once, right? So I think I felt this format was the only way for me to be able to capture that complexity here. And I wanted to show how shipworms are, basically many things at once, and to also take readers on this journey with me through my eyes. So the first thing I had to do was really to unpack the so-called exotic or scary narrative. So, Michelle, can you turn to next slide, please? Yeah. So, if you ever search shipworms or tamilok online, you are going to see headlines like these, and it's all about the shock or spectacle factor. So, in some of the headlines, you can see, oh, scary, like scariest food, horrible food, or would you eat it? So it's like there is this whole narrative around shipworm eating is about tasting something exotic or scary looking or odd delicacy that is actually consumed by local communities for decades, if not longer. So instead of just a biological curiosity in the story, I wanted to really weave together all these different questions. Can you turn to the next slide, please? So instead of just portraying shipworms as a biological curiosity, I wanted to, look at the social side of its dual identity, ground the science work in the reality of habitat loss. I think, Michelle and Giselle have already touched on that. And also through the story, I wanted to reflect on those colonial era perceptions, and I also explore the tension between conservation and online popularity that could actually lead to overharvesting. So I'm not saying this is actually happening right now in a community I've been to, but I think Rochelle and Giselle could maybe share a little bit more about this later, because we all know that sometimes, um, these like social media content can be a very powerful tool for scientists and researchers, because these content allow them to spot previously undocumented species and habitats. But at the same time, online popularity can also cause harm to local habitats. So imagine if you are drawing all these people in, and local fishes are um, they have this incentive to lead tourists into mangrove forest and to harvest them. So it can add pressure to the local ecosystem. So basically, through the story, there are like a lot of these questions I wanted to explore. For example, who benefits when a tradition becomes a global commodity? Um, and what do we owe the ecosystem that sustain these species? And what happens when science is ignored by those in power? In a case of the Floodgate scandal, so I guess like Maria, Giselle, and Michelle can talk a little bit about the Floodgate scandal and how that actually kind of highlight the urgency of habitat preservation, and this kind of basic science research. So, and I think lastly, through the story, and a major question I also wanted to explore is that, how do we actually navigate this paradox where making a species famous online helps science, but also might actually threaten its survival? So there are a lot of these things that can just, you know, that is just like there are like too many dimensions and layers, and context to shipworms in the Philippines. So I think this long form format is the only way that I can tell them in a more sensitive and, culturally grounded way. Um, so I also learn a lot from the process, from writing, researching, and being in the field with the team. So I'm really grateful. And yeah, so I think I think a key takeaway from me is that, by always learning these new things and connecting the dots to help others understand our world, our natural world, um, I'm reminded that there are so many people doing incredibly important work for our planet and for our communities. So I think it shows me that there is always hope and absolutely no reason to give up. I know that, if you follow international news closely, like I do, um, there are a lot of reasons to feel defeated and depressed about the state of our world and the state of our planet. But yeah, I think at the same time, I think that's exactly why I believe storytelling is so important, because stories help us make sense of the world. They can challenge our preconceived notions about a lot of things, and they also inspire action. And I think most of all, storytelling creates this space for us to imagine a different life, a different community, and a different future. Um, I think that is important. And I think a lot of times we say people are not waking up to climate change, people are not um, acting on the climate crisis. I would say the problem of climate change is actually a problem of communication, not because people are not aware of the severity of the climate crisis, but I think deep down they just they are not sure what they can do. So it's a crisis of communication. So that's why I think storytelling is so important. And I think which brings us to, I think, the next session, because in that collective effort of storytelling, I think collaboration is also a very important aspect. I think it can unlock a lot of interdisciplinary efforts. I think this project to me is basically multidisciplinary in the sense that, I capture the environmental, social, cultural, scientific significance on shipworms. And I also grant all these things to the local communities, lived experience of these community members. So yeah, so I just hope that this can like open up for more opportunities like this. So sorry, I've been talking too much. So I'll like hand it back to the others.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the initiatives and for trying to bring everybody together. I think these initiatives are not just, well, obviously very multidisciplinary, but at the same time, it's also bringing a lot of people of different backgrounds and also people speaking different languages together in order to work on this very important issue. So one question I have in regarding to these kind of collaborations would be, because when there are people of different backgrounds and languages, there must be conflicts and there must be disputes among you. So I'm curious, and particularly also you mentioned the crisis of communication. So what I'm curious to know from all of you is whether there are some challenges that you face as an interdisciplinary multicultural team with different knowledge, training, and perspectives. And how did you overcome some of these problems as well along the way? If there are any
Yeah.
stories
Okay.
that you can
So
share.
I've never had any issue working with the team because we're all lovely people. So, but yeah, so to actually answer your question, I think, like I said, I didn't have a formal J school training. So I kind of entered the industry just by, you know, learning at the get-go. So I learned everything by actually doing it. And at the same time, I also kept applying for media fellowships and training and story grants to support my reporting projects and to also like um, um, give me the funding to travel and build my network. and gain more exposure in the field. So eventually, I transitioned into writing in English and, and developed this niche in covering climate and health and environmental issues. So I would say because of this background, I have always been a very collaborative person, because like I learn by doing, basically, and also by listening to people and noticing the little things they would mention casually about the work or their lives. I think one of the training as a journalist is to really listen and observe and, spot all these interesting things from the ordinary and mundane. So, so I think that's really thanks to my non-traditional career path. So I've always been very open to collaboration. And I think particularly in science journalism, those trusted relationships are particularly important. Um, when you are collaborating closely with your sources and a community, is basically a constant reminder to approach the subject with care and sensitivity. And especially when it comes to writing about science, it's about accuracy as well and respect for the science and the people involved in the story. So can you turn to next slide, please? Yeah, so like I said, that Giselle's book was the spark of everything, but we actually needed that funding and opportunity to actually make it happen. So that opportunity came when we saw a grant call from the Contrapunto, which is an independent magazine at the International Institute of Social Studies, ISS, in the Netherlands. So the grant was literally called Bridging Narratives. So it had a very specific requirement that a journalist had to team up with a social scientist. So when we were discussing this project idea with Michelle and Giselle, we were like, we needed a social scientist. So that was the missing piece of our puzzle. And that's how Maria was brought into the team. Yay. So we were actually quite shocked to find out we were chosen out of 350 applications to be able to work on the story. So it really showed us there is a huge appetite, I guess, for this kind of interdisciplinary work and for this kind of stories about untold creatures, untold aspects of our natural world. So I've always been very much against parachute journalism, where a reporter drops into a place they don't know much about, grabs the story, and then just leaves. So, I'm very much against that practice. But then again, the reality is, as a freelancer, I just don't have the massive budget to spend a very long time in the field on my own. So I think these collaborative partnerships really help, as they allow for deeper access and a more grounded perspective that I simply could not achieve if I were working in a silo. So, always be respectful. I've always, I have immense respect for people working in science. I think that sense of wonder has been the major thing that saved me. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but we are parachuting towards the end of our wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
We have more or less 10 minutes left if you want to wrap it a bit up before we open our Q&A session.
Yeah, I've been talking too much, so I'll let Maria, Michelle, and Giselle to add on what I just said.
Okay, very quickly on my end on the question from QI on conflicts. I guess I don't have a conflict like Crystal said. It helps to have a team, people who get along and communicate well. One issue for me as a scientist is journalism is so much faster. Like, I am actually not so ready to have this public webinar yet. We haven't published anything officially. So if you can see, there's nothing talking about our own scientific publications because I'm like, Krista, you're too fast for us. So that's my major.
No, I am too slow for a lot of working journalists.
So it's just very different timelines. She's slow for a journalist, but too fast for me.
I agree. Yeah, from a humanities literature and film scholar. Yeah.
Closing thought, one thing I'd like to say is I think in this sense, we're all self-taught in academe, which is very different from journalism, but at least in the way I do it, I always enter these questions that I know nothing about it. That's the whole point. I know nothing about it. I don't know how I'm going to approach it, but it's fine. I'm always a beginner. I learn on the job. So I like working with people who are about the same, who like, okay, let's figure it out as we go along. And so I was very glad that through the contrapuntal grant, I had this reason to reach out to Maria, who is a longtime friend, and say, we need to collaborate. This is a way we can collaborate. And she was fine with, okay, I don't know much about this either, but let's just do it. And because we started with this story through Contrapuntal, we actually now have follow-up scientific funding where we're going to officially work together, like bringing the anthropology side and the biology side in studying shipworms further. So that's, yeah.
Please let me tag
think-
along.
Sure. So that's the little thing I wanted to add. And I really want to hear a bit more from Maria because,
Yeah.
So I also just jumped into this, and at the same time, part of the context for me is that I'm about to teach a field school, with which means to bring some students so they can engage with the community and learn how to do research in the field. And so at the time of the expedition led by Michelle, I was supposed to be looking for a field site, and so I said okay, and I might, and she actually said it's a great place. So when I was there, I learned about shipworms and how to find them, and also engaged with the vloggers who were the reason why that place was identified actually by Michelle's team. And so I wanted to actually also mention, in relation to the concern expressed about the knowledge of ecological systems and species dying out, I think the vloggers also express such concern because they say they love their place. That's why they do all these videos and show you all these exotic looking things that they can find there and eat there. But they're also concerned because their own children don't want to go with them, and they're too concerned with their video games and cell phones. So this is actually a concern. And so anyway, my main point is that I think the thing that would be next after the contrapuntal would be something that would allow the vloggers and the communities to engage more directly with these questions as well. I think it was wonderful that there is a storybook, and I was very amazed at how Crystal put the whole story together, because I learned so much also about, wow, so that's what this could mean. And she also took great photographs. So I think a next step could be to bring it to the place, because my concern is that the community itself might be the one left out of engaging with these questions. So maybe we could bring the story to the place where we did the expedition, show Crystal's photos, and allow them to also engage with the very same questions that we are opening up here. And I am hoping to go back. So we need to develop some kind of way to keep the conversation also with the places where we do our research. Not that parang you just went there. I mean, it's not that we just went there, gathered a lot of information, found it so impressive and valuable, but the community itself is not able to engage also with the same questions.
Yeah, this is just the beginning of everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, take me back.
Let's go.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot for the whole team and for all that you have been doing. Yeah, we do look forward to seeing more from this project. And I guess because of the time, we have about half an hour actually for Q&A as well. So in case if there is any questions, feel free to either type your question or you can raise your hand and switch on your mic and also raise your question. directly if there's any. Oh, I already see there's
Yeah, somebody's wrote in the chat.
right.
So maybe I can read the question out loud for our speakers. Fascinating work. Has consumption use of shipworms changed over time in the Philippines? First question. Do different regions have different uses in terms of cuisine and cultivation? Are there efforts to track species biogeography and history to evaluate like changes in a climate change future?
Right. I guess can I answer that question?
Go ahead.
All right.
Go ahead.
Right. So, in terms of the biogeographical distribution of the species, that's actually been one of the things that we wanted funding for, to sample different biogeographical areas in the Philippines. As you can see in the map, it's so many islands and so many geographic regions. What we don't know is if the species that we see on the on the western coast of the country, are those also the same species as the ones that we find in the inner seas or in the eastern coast. Records in terms of literature, it seems like there are some species that are quite that have quite limited distribution. But again, we don't have recent data to back that up. From the few field sites that we visited, there are repeating species that we observe, at least at the genus level, and maybe for some species, it's quite like similar. But overall, there is no biogeographic data. But in terms of utilization as food, it's generally ceviche or kinilaw, what we call it. So most people just put vinegar or lime or calamansi. And yeah, for the freshwater ones, which I guess we only observed so far in Mindoro, they cook the shipworms. Yeah, I think that answers the question.
Yeah, then we have a second question. Do you have any researchable areas you could suggest for these marine invertebrates regarding their biology and distribution? Identification of the parasite found among these organisms?
Right. So we're drafting, as Michelle said earlier. So in academia, publishing tends to be slower than
Right.
in journalism. Yeah, because of so many factors. But we are drafting a manuscript on the known geographic distributions of known species of shipworms, and we hope that that would eventually inform future researchers of where to conduct their field work. So, well, right now, on the top of my head, I can't, I don't know. I guess if any area with mangroves or any even along the coasts with sunken wood, there's probably shipworms there. Yeah. In terms of parasites, we haven't actually observed, at least from our dissection. So I do the dissection part for the team. We haven't observed parasites.
Maybe they mean symbionts, maybe the
Yeah.
bacteria inside of them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the superpower.
probably. Superpowered symbionts is what Louis means. There are so many things you can research on. It depends on your interests, but I think just basically documenting how it is perceived and used by local communities would be something very unique to start with, and will inform the rest of your questions. But it depends on your interests and what resources your institute has, and we can talk more about it maybe separately, because
Another question came, just curious, do shipworms breed, thrive on ancient wooden shipwrecks or boats?
Yeah. Hi, Michelle. I know this person. As mentioned in the beginning, yeah, definitely. They were in, if you mean back in older times, whether they also had shipworms, yes. And about ancient wood, like sunken wood, as long as it's accessible to the shipworms, it's not completely covered by sediments and completely lacking in oxygen, there will be shipworms that will settle on it eventually. That's my experience. Any random piece of wood sunken underwater in the sea will eventually get shipworms. And sometimes it looks solid, but if you try to open it up, it's completely hollow inside because of the shipworms. But if it's like, say, because Michelle works in archaeology, if it's sunken in anoxic mud, meaning no oxygen anymore, probably the shipworms won't be able to live there.
And I have a question. Actually, as I work on oysters,
Sorry, yeah.
I'm quite curious to know why people often overlook mollusks. Why we don't have any particular empathy or attached to them unless we belong to a communities in which we consume them, we aquafarm them, we grow them, we are in touch. Do you think is it because we live very isolated from the environment, from nature, from water, from the sea? Why don't we have, people just think of oysters as a food, but not as a medicine or not as like a sort of ecological like engineer that helps like to purify water.
Right. I think
Yeah.
precisely as QY mentioned earlier, the anthropomorphous forms in literature and in media. I think one big thing is because they don't have eyes. Like any organism, look at plants. I mean, I guess because their plants are pretty, plants have flowers and all, but people have more empathy or affinity towards organisms that have eyes. If you compare a beetle and an
An
oyster,
elephant.
an elephant over an oyster, well, people would gravitate more towards something with a face. So that's one. And because I guess because we rarely think of commodities as also kin. I mean, yeah. If you there's a better way of
Yeah.
explaining this. I think Maria could
Yeah,
explain this
I
more.
also have something to add to that. So years ago, I worked on a story investigating the illegal trade and poaching of South African abalone, and how they were trafficked into the Chinese markets. And I think this has been a long-standing problem in conservation, because like if we say we want to protect elephants, rhinos, sharks, or other creatures that are considered charismatic, it's easy. Like people remember, oh, how important they are. They would feel that affinity, like just said, towards these creatures. But for creatures that have no face, no charisma, no eyes, you tell them about the importance of these creatures, the next thing they will forget about it. I think that's why storytelling is important in this sense. Yeah, I'm not sure if Maria has also something to add on to that.
I forgot. I'm sorry, I forgot what I had thought of earlier.
Well, but can I also add that in addition to the appearance of the creature, also the name of it matters as well, right? So I'm seeing that you have also mentioned there are some people who are advocating the renaming of it instead of calling it shipworm. That seems to have some kind of a negative connotation. Maybe we should call it something else that may be more approachable to people, right?
Yeah. So one of the international experts I talked to in the story, um, so they are actually starting the world's first shipworm farm. So they are trying to farm shipworms, um, in the hopes that one day they will become a commercially viable product. Um, because shipworms are said to be um, more nutritious than other seafood, and because you can feed them on sunken wood, fallen logs. So it's also more environmental friendly to culture them. Um, so I think one of the drive is to change people perception, because if you tell them you're going to eat worms, a lot of people will say, oh, there's this ache factor in consuming worms. So there is, I think their solution is to rebranding that shipworms as naked clams. So it's like by emphasizing shipworms as a kind of mollusk that is similar to clams and mussels and oysters. Um, but naked clams is like, because you don't really see the shells that much from shipworms, so the name naked clams. So, but I'm not sure how much this name has caught on, and we are still calling it the
Yeah.
shipworms.
That's what I
Yeah.
get from the title of today's talk as well, from pest
Yeah.
to promise. Yeah, right. Yeah.
There's a question about the parasite. Maybe it's in connection to the ugaong, because you mentioned, Crystal, that the one that
Yeah,
the
but
river.
maybe Michelle, maybe can you talk a little bit about the how the symbiont works, because that symbiotic bacteria also has the ability to fend off other pathogens in the environment.
But first I'll answer what
Yeah,
Maria was saying. So
yeah,
we mentioned earlier that there are some shipworm species that are found in fresher waters in the rivers, and we learned about them only through vloggers. Essentially, it wasn't even known prior, and that actually led to a discovery of a new species from the vlogging community, which is very cool. And so indeed, we need to give back to the community as well. And what we learned from their work, and they are also informed by traditional knowledge from their community, is the freshwater ones, the river shipworms, or river, let's not call them, anyway. Don't know what to call them anymore now. The river,
No wood.
the common name is ugaong. We can look at the photo over here. They're never eaten raw. And so I was very curious about that, because as a biologist, that makes sense to me, because fresh water has many more parasites that can harm humans. You can get E. coli, you can get all kinds of things. Well, you can get it from marine too, but you get it more from freshwater stuff. So we tried to ask, why do you cook these? And the ones, the tamilok from the mangroves, you eat them raw. And they say, oh, they give you, I remember, right? They're itchy, and they give you a stomach
yeah. They just
ache.
taste better when
But
cooked.
because I am a biologist, when I ask those questions, it's like it's not the main focus of what I do. So it's really nice when I have others with me, like Maria, who can focus more on the human aspects. So it is possible that, especially the river ones, might have pathogens, shall we say, organisms in them that might cause, stomach upset or worse. And that's area wide open for research. So these are the photos on the right side are from a river site we went to. And to answer Crystal's question about the symbionts, what was your question, Crystal? The
Yeah,
bacteria.
I think that there's one of the superpowers of the symbiotic bacteria is that, they can help the host fend off some pathogens in the environment. And I think there are certain chemical compounds in them that are being developed as a anti-malarial drugs or something. Yeah, that's what I read from the literature.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so a lot of shipworm research is actually driven by interest in their bacterial symbionts. There's at least one species of bacterium that is only known from shipworms, and they're the ones that basically the host cultivates in its gut, and that helps it digest the wood because they have enzymes that digest the cellulose in the wood. And my understanding is they essentially need to be the only species in the gut of the shipworm. They don't want other species of bacteria to colonize it. So that is one reason why people are so interested in it, because the bacteria and the shipworm together actively suppress the growth of other bacteria, and so that there's only one species of bacteria in their guts. And so that could be a source of new antibiotics, for example, because that's exactly what antibiotics do. They are compounds secreted by microbes as chemical weapons to fight off other bacteria. And probably most people know we have an antibiotics crisis right now, and we're running out of effective antibiotics because pathogenic bacteria have evolved resistance to them. So biomedical researchers, pharmaceutical researchers are always interested in developing new pharmaceuticals and new antibiotics. So that's one active area of research there. They were collaborating with yet another scientist on that aspect. Now, the malaria aspect, I'm actually not sure. The literature is so vast.
Yeah, I
They must be
think
very related.
yeah. It's in my story. I think Lilybeth told me about it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe I think that's like just a range of different biomedical application
yeah.
in the symbiotic bacteria. So which is like super cool.
I
Yeah,
think we.
oh, yeah,
Oh,
without
sorry.
the back, sorry, but yeah, without the background in science, but what I'm learning from Michelle and the team is, I guess a lot of these narratives, particularly also not just about the shipworms, but also bacteria, how we are changing the narratives in order to have an idea that it isn't really just something that perhaps damage our ships or woods, but it has its function as well, right? So I guess these kind of changing narratives would actually help us in appreciating their existence more in
Mm.
its case. Sorry, yeah, Olga.
I think there is one last question that we can take that was written in the chat. I think this is for Maria. So,
Right.
how has anthropology contributed to the storytelling about the shipworms and the people who values this?
Yeah. Can I also add another related question, because we're talking about like the humans and involved, particularly also about the local community. It reminds me of a recent news about some of the Oxford researchers who have discovered an exotic flower, and they have been working also with the local Indonesian locals, but then they are not really acknowledged or get credited. I mean, the locals are not really get credited, and that has been also criticized as a kind of like academic colonialism or something like that. So I think, curious to know a little bit more about how perhaps the local communities would also be if either credited or engaged in the research in going forward for all of you, when you're publishing or working with them, how perhaps their role would also be recognized in a way. Is any of them in our audience today?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, with regard to anthropology, I first of all would really like to acknowledge Takashi Tsuji, who wrote the article I encountered about the shipwrecks, the Tamilok, and he might even be here. He said he would attend. So if you're there, okay.
Saw him earlier.
He even has posted. Hi, okay. So, okay, so it's nice you're here, Takashi. But anyway, the thing that anthropologists would bring to the conversation, the narratives, would be paying attention to the local knowledge, which is what Takashi did, and also Crystal and me when we went to Ola to the place in Oriental Mindoro. Um, what else was I going to add? Okay, so I haven't actually yet written anything myself, just like Michelle. So there is no contribution I have made yet, except for maybe sharing the stories today. Um, but I think because we will go back, then uh, what is most important, I think, in terms of doing research in a place where it's about the knowledge of people, is that you need to maintain links with that place and the people, and so keep the conversation going because it's actually open-ended. We don't know how we can answer a lot of these big questions that have been raised. And they have also been raising the same questions, I think, in the way that the vloggers have tried to share about the parts of their environment that are very special to them. And uh, at the same time are worried that this knowledge is not enjoyed and shared with their children. So they actually are asking the same questions. And we need to be humanly able to uh, connect somehow with them as with locals and scientists as humans. It's a bit far away, but and the but I think with all these new technologies, we can be friends on Facebook. We can keep talking directly to them now, to locals, unlike before. So maybe that's the best thing. Takashi had message, but I think he only sent the message to me. He's in the audience, and he says, 30 years ago, when he started his research, Tamilok was not taken seriously and my work was ridiculed. But now, seeing interest turn toward Tamilok is a pleasant surprise and encourages us to pursue its potential. Collaboration among anthropologists, biologists, and others has the potential to enhance our understanding of the relationship between Tamilok and humans. That's from Takashi. So it's really a relationship between ourselves and other species, and also between scientists and of different disciplines, different species of scientists, and between local communities and global conversations.
Thank you, Maria. So on that note, I think we are running out of time. Can I also invite each of the speaker to, if there's anything to add, yeah, please feel free to give any final notes or thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I can quickly go first. So I have already put the link to the contrapuntal story in the chat box, and my story is fully sourced. So you will find all the links to the things I mentioned, including Dr. Shuji's paper. So you can go for the story and you can find the link to his paper. So to me, shipworms really is a creature that carries many names and a whole multitude of meanings. So and like Michelle said, it's a fundamental species for understanding how symbiosis works on this planet as well. So I think what's important is that they represent kind of like so much knowledge that we still don't have. And I think honestly, knowledge we cannot afford to lose. So I think this kind of collaborative project, I hope it's just the beginning of a long-term collaborative partnership. And I really hope to be back in the Philippines soon and to work alongside the team and maybe other people as well, and the community, of course.
All right.
I guess for
Yeah.
my part, it's just well, even from a biologist perspective, I guess, is whatever field we are in, I guess when we go out into in any environment, it's to have a more nuanced view of our research activities, that they are not confined to our own like, I guess, scientific questions, but that it is all part of this ecosystem. Yeah, so that's all for my part.
Okay, so thanks a lot for all your contributions, and thanks for the team sharing and all. Yeah, Michelle, Maria, Giselle, and Crystal. I hope this conversation can goes on, and I hope, yeah, if there's any way that we can hear more from your research and your projects, yeah, feel do let us know how we can continue to follow that. We really look forward to, yeah, hearing more on these exciting topics. Okay, thank you. So let me just, okay. So before we end, I guess oops, can I share my slide? No. Okay. So yeah, before we end the session, just a few well, anything would you like to add anything, Olga?
No, just thank you so much for like this talk. I think it was very interesting to see how like academic and journalists can really produce a very insightful collaboration, which leads like to publication, like awareness about a very hot topic, I think, which is like animals and their ecological like power, which is beyond like their habitat, but also like food and medicine. So thank you so much for like connecting today, and I will let Professor QY talk a little bit about the next webinars that we are organizing soon.
Right. So yeah, in the coming month and two, we will also be having other online seminars and book talks. Yeah. So next in line would be on the 24th of February, we will be having a book talk with co-editors of this newly released book titled Taiwanese Eco-Literature Reader, with the co-editors and also translator of some of these leading Taiwanese literature writers' work. So in case if you are interested in reading and learning more about Taiwanese writers like Wu Mingyi, Xiamen Nanbo-an, and Liao Hongqi, etc., their works have been translated into this book, and the co-editors will be talking about them as well. So we will have Ian Rowan, Chang Ti Han, and also Daryl Stuck with us. And then in mid-March, we will also have another online seminar with two Hong Kong historians who works on wild animal protection in colonial Hong Kong, focusing on civet cats in particular. So do join us, and in case if you would like to learn more about our research cluster, the Environmental Humanities Research Cluster of NTU School of Humanities, do try to follow us on either Facebook. We will try to expand our and perhaps to post our future information in other social platforms as well. But currently, we are most active on Facebook. So in case if you're interested to follow, do try and follow the Facebook page that I'm managing on Asian environmental humanities, Asian eco-criticism and environmental humanities in Asia. We'll try our best to also bring you new stories and new researchers, particularly in the Asian context. And feel free to also email me if you have any questions or suggestions for future collaboration. We'll try our best to let others know about all these exciting stories like the ones on Shipworm that we just had with our team. So thank you everybody for joining, and hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you, QY.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
everyone who
Thank you.
joined.
Thank you. Bye bye.